Ballroom and get you started on your day with the Healing Our Waters Coalition.
MPCA's regional and field capacity to effectively engage and partner with park advocates, local governments, and organizations nationwide. Prior to her role at NPCA, and this is where I met Theresa, in October of 2004, she served as the Vice President for the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and Maryland Executive Director since 1999. Prior to that, Theresa was part of the executive staff at the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, and she served as Director of Education, Bay Policy, Growth, and Resource Conservation. Theresa earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from the University of Baltimore and is a fellow with the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University, having graduated from the Senior Executive State and Local Government Program. Please join me in welcoming Theresa Pierno with the National Parks Conservation Section.
Yeah. Don't you just love when they read the whole bio? Sorry, Jeff. But, I'm supposed to start out this morning by talking about really a little bit about NPCA, but I want to first say that the work that all of you have done is amazing. The Healing Our Waters Coalition, what has been accomplished is really, truly incredible. And, you know, I have to say that at NPCA, we have been involved in many coalitions around the country. We co-chair the Great Waters Coalition, the Great Lakes Coalition, as well as the Everglades Coalition, and we've been working in coordinated fashion for many years, and we recognize that collaboration and the work that we all do together is the most powerful work, that's how you really achieve results. And the model that you've really set out here in the Great Lakes really is a model to be replicated across the country. One of the things that is really clear is that when this was started in the Great Lakes, in fact, Peter Wege met with a small group of people on the shores of Lake Michigan, and it really was a small group of people, leaders from the Great Lakes community. And it's now developed into 120 strong, which is really a testament to the dedication and to the people in this room. And I think you should give yourselves a hand for that. It's an incredible accomplishment to have included the federal government and to be able to have the state, the business leaders, the local, all the way through that are really working in a collaborated, coordinated fashion and having real results. And many times we don't take the time to step back and really celebrate those results. And if you think about it, it's, you know, kind of moving on to the next. We work very quickly, we work hard, but it's always about the next results. And while we need to look ahead, we also need to look back and say, wow, we've accomplished some critically important benefits for the restoration of the Great Lakes, and let's take a minute to celebrate them. And I want to say a few things about those. 6 in particular that I want to raise. You basically have 1, federal policy reforms for toxic sediment cleanup. You've made significant strides in control of invasive species. There's more work to be done, but you need to celebrate what has been done. You've secured billions of dollars from Congress to update sewers in the Great Lakes cities and to stop some of the raw sewage that has been entering the precious lakes. And you've shaped the blueprint for the Great Lakes cleanup by providing Healing Our Waters scientists to the regional collaboration strategy. And you've secured $5 billion commitment from prior to the president becoming president, then candidate Obama, during his run in 2008. And you've all secured $1 billion through the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative to clean up polluted harbors, restore wetlands, and keep invasive species from taking over the Great Lakes. And in this tough economic climate, which this one is truly amazing for all of you who have worked certainly with Congress and are dealing with the budget, that you've been able to secure $300 million in this fiscal year 12 budget is truly a testament to the power in this room. And you've got to give another hand of applause. You've got to celebrate your victories because they are real victories in this tough time. But as you know, this job is far from done. And Canada and the United States need to continue to put the pressure on to improve policies, to continue to fight for additional dollars, and to really make the necessary changes. And the arguments are all there. I mean, it's clear the economic benefit. Studies have shown at least 2 to 1, and we have reports in the impact that it even go higher than that, that show for every dollar you spend, you're going to at least double what you bring in an investment in the area. So it's clearly a jobs creator and very important for the economic benefit. But the absolute impact of clean water for 30 million people that depend on this source of drinking water is a powerful argument for why the work has to continue and be done in this area. And finally, I would say that as somebody who lives in the Chesapeake region and spent my career really working on Chesapeake Bay restoration prior to coming to NPCA, and who has a personal stake in it. I live right off the Chesapeake Bay and the South River with my family. They fish, we eat crabs. We recognize the important benefit, the health of the community, of the people, and it is critical that this work nationwide continue and that we protect these incredible, important places. So congratulations to all of you. And I'd like to call out one specific agency that, above all, I think deserves to be recognized, and that's the EPA. Our EPA administrator and the EPA has taken incredible hits, and they have to know that we have their back, that we're going to continue to defend them as they go after enforcing the Clean Water Act, which, quite frankly, for many years prior had not been enforced at the level that it needs to be. So we need to continue to stand strong because that work has to be done in order to protect the Great Lakes and the great waters in the entire country. Thank you all very much for the work that you do.
Thank you, Theresa. Our next speaker is Larry Schweiger from the National Wildlife Federation, my own organization. The first time I've ever got a chance to introduce Larry, so I better get it right. Larry is the president and CEO of the National Wildlife Federation. NWF is America's largest conservation organization with 48 affiliates and more than 4 million members and supporters. Larry is an active community leader, having served on more than 40 governing boards, commissions, and committees. He currently serves on the board of directors of the Climate Reality Project, the Climate Reality Action Fund, the John Hines Center for Science, Economics, and the Environment, the Blue-Green Alliance, and the National Wildlife Federation Action Fund. In 2011, Larry was awarded the Citizens for Pennsylvania's Future Visionary Award for his leadership in raising awareness about the critical impacts of climate change throughout the world and commitment to employing clean energy solutions. Larry was selected as Pennsylvania's Environmental Professional of the Year in 2002, Pittsburgher of the Year in 2000, and he received a Conservation Service Award from the Christian Environmental Association in September of '95. Larry's written a book on global warming and wildlife, released by Fulcrum Publishing in September of 2009. The book is called Last Chance, Preserving Life on Earth. You should all read it. Larry can tell you about it. It was awarded first prize for nonfiction by the Next Generation Indie Book Awards in 2011. I'll also say that I'm guessing that many people in this room are on Facebook, as I am, and I'm going to guess also that many of you might agree with me that 90% or so of what gets on Facebook is probably really not worth looking at. Larry was the first person that I ever noticed on Facebook who started to post really poignant, really insightful stories and ideas on climate change long before, in the midst of all our friends telling us that they're down at Starbucks having coffee, Larry's post would show up on cutting-edge information about climate change, just one of the many, many sort of progressive things that Larry's engaged in. So thank you, Larry, for teaching me a little bit about Facebook. Larry Schweiger.
Thanks, Jeff, for that kind introduction. And it's really a pleasure for me to be here with so many committed people who care deeply about the Great Lakes. I want to also thank Theresa for her important comments, and I hope we take that to heart. And also would like to acknowledge our many partners who made this joint session possible this morning. It's really great to see the kind of collaboration that's happening on the Great Lakes. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and so our summer vacations were on Lake Erie, and I frankly look forward to those times. And it was in the early 60s when I arrived on the beach at Presque Isle that we saw incredible mats of dead fish, and the stench was absolutely staggering. And we were witnessing what Barry Commodore predicted would be the death of Lake Erie. And we saw, I think, the last vestiges of the blue pike that is now extinct. But that moment, standing on the beach as a 14-year-old boy, was transformative for me. And I made a vow that day that I would spend my life working in this field. And I didn't know what that meant at that time. I didn't know the extent to which that moment would actually transform my personal life. But I've seen a lot of things happen since then. In 1970, we began to work on the Clean Water Act, worked with a number of key people around the Great Lakes to bring attention to the need for the money that was in the Clean Water to build the Clean Water Act, to build the sewage treatment plants that were desperately needed. Communicated with Gerald Ford as minority leader of the House to encourage Nixon to sign the legislation, which incidentally he vetoed, and the Congress overrode that veto very, very dramatically. We got the $18 billion to move forward on the Clean Water Act. But so much has been done since that day, and I want to acknowledge the restoration work that you and so many others are doing around the Great Lakes, removing dams, restoring wetlands, dredging toxic spoils in places where they need cleaned up, and so many other important restoration projects. It's really exciting to see the on-the-ground work that's being done to restore this place that I love so dearly. And I can tell you that it means a lot to us to know that we have partners in this region who are willing to stand up for the Clean Water Act and to defend the actions, as Theresa talked about, that the EPA is taking. And so for me, it's very, very exciting to see that work going forward, to see it continue and to strengthen. And there's so much yet to be done. We all know that. Invasive species are knocking at our door. Earlier this year, I had an opportunity to be on the Mississippi River where the Asian carp are abundant, and to motorboat and fish through areas where these fish were occurring. And I can assure you, you do not want to see those fish in the Great Lakes. And we're going to try to do everything we can to try to avoid that. It's really important to build the resilience of the Great Lakes, to create and restore the wetlands that have been damaged, to eliminate the storm overflows, and do all these other things that you all are working to do. And it's important to build that resilience because we're also seeing this new threat that is coming on the scene. And we saw some early glimpses of that this year. I don't know if you noticed, but there was a time where parts of the Mississippi River hit 90 degrees. Well, we have cold water fish and we have warm water fish, but we don't have hot water fish. And I can assure you that as the temperatures go up, we're going to see increasing strains on these resources. I look at the brook trout in my home state of Pennsylvania. 30% of the original brook trout habitat is now vacant. And the same pattern is occurring. Over 80% of the brook trout habitat is in decline in the U.S. And that is because we're overheating these streams and we're changing the nature of our fisheries. We're seeing problems in the Susquehanna River because of high temperatures and pollution. We've seen the similar problems in the Chesapeake Bay. There are a number of groups around the country that are working together, and we need to do more to prepare these ecosystems for the future. But we also need to address climate change itself. If there's ever been a year where climate change has been impactful in America, it was this year. You know, Phoenix has had 3 Dust Bowl blowouts where they've actually enveloped the entire city in a black dust. It actually had caused folks to turn on their lights during the daytime. Very dramatic changes. We're seeing droughts sweep over much of America. We're seeing incredible numbers of forest fires, which have been predicted for a long time. And we're seeing those not just in the U.S., but around the world. But the most disturbing things for me were the things that were happening up north. I visited Greenland in 2007. Greenland had 40% melt in 2007. This summer, it had a period where we were melting 98% of the surface of Greenland. Very dramatic changes. In the Arctic this year, we're going to set an all-time new record for Arctic melt. And the most disturbing thing of all was that over top of the Arctic this year, the carbon dioxide levels hit over 400 parts per million, which is very significantly above the ambient carbon dioxide levels on the planet, which tells me that the Arctic is now giving up its own carbon. And there's twice as much carbon stored in the Arctic as is currently in the sky. So we need to move quickly to address climate change. We need to move quickly to make sure that these ecosystems like the Great Lakes are properly protected, restored, and maintained for the future. And so it does me a lot of good to see so many people here concerned about this important ecological system that's at risk. And I want to challenge you to press forward, to not just get discouraged, but to stand strong for the resources that you love. And we'll work together to make sure that we protect those for our children and their future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Larry. I'm going to introduce now our third speaker of the morning and final speaker before we actually jump into our workshop sessions. Our third speaker is Lyall Knott, is a Canadian Commissioner to the International Joint Commission. He is a senior partner at Clark Wilson in a Vancouver-based law firm, born and raised in Vancouver. Mr. Knott earned a Bachelor of Commerce degree in 1971, a Bachelor of Laws degree in 1972, both from the University of British Columbia. He earned a Master of Laws from the University of London, England in 1973, and in 1985 he was appointed to the rank of Queen's Counsel. Mr. Knott is an honorary captain of the Royal Canadian Navy, is honorary member of the Naval Officers Association of British Columbia. Among his many awards, he was the recipient in 2000 of the Blythe Eagles Volunteer Service Award, in 2002 of the Commonwealth Medal for the Queen's Golden Jubilee, and in 2003 the Medal of Merit Award of the Lions International. Mr. Knott serves on the boards of directors of several charitable organizations. He is the chair of the Rick Hansen Foundation, board secretary to Success, and former chair of the UBC Foundation. He is the honorary counsel for the Republic of Tunisia and a member of the British Columbia Consular Corps. Mr. Knott was appointed to the Royal Roads University Fellows Council. He is an active member of the Vancouver Board of Trade and is a member of the Law Society of British Columbia. Is that enough, Mr. Knott? Please join me in welcoming Lyall Knott.
Thank you, Jeff. Merci beaucoup. Et bonjour, les messieurs et mesdames. Good morning. It's a real pleasure for all of us who are here today from the International Joint Commission to join you at this joint session and to share with you all our passion for this binational treasure, the Great Lakes. And as it is a binational treasure, it is also a binational responsibility. Well, we have a full program, and I know that we are all looking forward to a most interesting morning. Now it's my honor to introduce one of my colleagues on the International Joint Commission, U.S. Chair Lana Pollack, who will be serving as moderator at the first session. After serving with Lana on the International Joint Commission for 2 years now, if there's one thing I've learned about her, it's this: she loves the lakes. And it's no passing crush. Lana loves the Great Lakes with a passion that is reflected in a lifetime of service to the lakes. She has been an advocate for the Great Lakes as a state legislator, as head of the Michigan Environmental Council, and as President Obama's choice to chair the U.S. section of the International Joint Commission. Please join me in welcoming my friend and fellow Commissioner, Lana Pollack.
Thank you, Lyall. It is a great pleasure to be here this morning. I will interject that I was there that fateful evening on Lake Michigan when Mr. Wegge hosted a number of people and the Healing Our Waters Coalition was born. And I would like to say that I was the most visionary among the people there that evening. I was not. In my wildest dreams, I did not expect the level of success that has been achieved, and my deepest thanks and congratulations to all, starting with the Wegge Foundation, but certainly so many others. So it's my pleasure today to introduce three exceptional people. I'm going to do it all together, and they will follow in order after so I won't interrupt the flow. From the EPA, Susan Hedman, a fierce and successful advocate and attorney. She got her PhD and her law degree from Madison, from Wisconsin, at the same time. I first met Susan when the Michigan's largest utility was going to reopen a dirty old coal-fired plant that by law and rights under law couldn't be opened without new equipment and upgrading. And the Michigan Environmental Council, with whom I was working at that time, had no way of standing up to this very large utility. We were fortunate that we went to the Environmental Law and Policy Center, and they assigned a young attorney named Susan Hedman, who beat the utility in federal court, and that was my introduction to Susan. Fortunately, I've been able to work with her in other capacities too. She's worked at the United Nations. She's been successful in claiming damages in the Kuwait oil fields fires. She has been a senior attorney, assistant attorney at the Illinois Attorney General's office. And I think most importantly, she is performing her duties and responsibilities at Region 5 in such a way that the laws are being enforced and the lakes are being protected. And we are fortunate to have her here this morning. I'd also like to introduce Rachel Jacobson. She's a senior policy official at the Department of Interior, overseeing the Interior's Fish and Wildlife Service, and including a 150 million acre wildlife refuge system. She too is an attorney and a litigator, a trial attorney, and a successful one at that. She was the lead negotiator in the recent $1 billion early restoration settlement with BP, British Petroleum, arising out of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. So these are just two of the people you'll hear from this morning. And I think also, if I might pause to add, there's an example of the quality and the determination, the brain power, and I use the word fierce determination, that get appointed to important positions by the Obama administration. Those appointments matter. And finally, a man who I've been fortunate to work with since I began my work with Canada at the IJC. Michael Goffin, of course, has been working on Canadian environmental issues with the Government of Canada for many years. He has had a wealth of experience, as I read his resume, in virtually every aspect of resource management, protection, regulation, and most recently and importantly, along with Susan Hedman, the two of them, Mike Goffin and Susan, were the critical voices, the experts at the table as the Clean Water, the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement was refreshed and negotiated. From my perspective, they did a fine job. They didn't finish the job. The job has to be finished by all of us as we implement it, and by them in their positions at Environment Canada and at the EPA. So Mike Goffin, Regional Director General for Environment Canada in Ontario, will join the panel. First, I think it's going to be Susan Hedman and Rachel